The local signal emote is probably the easiest way for two weenies to communicate triggered commands, and if you're working with any sort of complex content, you'll benefit a lot from using it. Here we have our little buddy, the Dredge Skulker. I don't believe I mentioned this before, but if we modify this file without changing this unique WCID here, and we leave it in our content folder, every Dredge Skulker that spawns anywhere in Dareth will receive the changes that we made. So sometimes you want to do that, and sometimes you don't. When you don't, of course, you would make a new WCID here, make a new weenie entirely. If you wanted to modify all the Dredge Skulkers in the world, this is one way to do it. It's just to leave the weenie ID the same, and just add it to your content folder. So let's go ahead and give him a new emote. Right now we have on death till you killed me from our previous video. Let's do something like scream. I'm going to use a new emote action here, which is local signal. And instead of this, we're going to say help me. So if we were to go in game and aggro this Dredge Skulker, he would send the local signal help me. But it won't do any good if we don't have something to receive this local signal. So let's go ahead and make something there. So here we are with our Shreth generator. We can go ahead and put a new emote here, receive local signal, help me, I before E except after C. I'm going to go over here and say generate. Now as we saw with generation, there are some properties that are required for emotes to work. In this case, with receiving local signals, there are some integer properties that we need to set. They are going to be integer 290, which is here local signals. And that's always set to 1, just basically means true. And then here local signals radius. Now this can be a wide range of values. Right now we'll just set it to 100, and we'll talk about that later. And as you may remember from our previous video on generation, for emote triggered generators, we need to have this regeneration interval at 0 or removed entirely. We'll just put it at 0 for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to import those two weenies, and as you remember, we can do that either by directly doing it, selecting in the drop-down menu here, and hitting import, or we can do import-sql weenies all. That imports all the things we had in our folder, which includes the Dredge Skulker and the Shreth generator. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to place an instance of the Shreth generator. We're going to create instance. Need to turn administrator vision on so we can see it. There we go, there it is. And then we will place a Dredge Skulker. Create an instance of him. So as you remember, we set his local signal to fire off on scream, which is what happens when a monster aggroes for the first time. So attackable on. And there you go. He screamed. We don't see anything in the text. This is something invisible to players, even administrative players, the signals that go out, the local signals. But this Shreth generator, because we had set those two int properties so that it can hear local signals, and it's within the 100 unit radius that we set with the 291 int, as well as the receive local signal emote, it was able to hear it and respond, and its response was to generate. So one important thing to note is that this local signal that was being sent only travels within this land block. So the land block that he's in as he sends his local signal is where the local signal propagates. It doesn't go beyond the land block. There are some tricks that we can use to affect things across land blocks. They're not really efficient, and they're beyond the scope of this video. So sometimes we do want a narrower hearing radius. There's some tricks that you can do with a shorter hearing radius. I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to create a second Shreth generator. This will be 101, and I'm going to change its receive local signal to avenge me. And if you remember from our previous video, the generator video, we need to go ahead and modify the generator table because WeenieFab does not do that for us. So we're going to have to go ahead and change this WCID here to 101 so that things will generate. And then we come back to our Dredge Skulker and we give him another emote. I'm going to do on death, local signal, avenge me. So as you can see, monsters can send many different local signals. They can receive many different local signals, and they can do something different every time. So huge number of possibilities of things that you can do with local signals. Basically, it's just a way of communicating commands from one weenie to another. Alright, so as you can see, I made a number of other changes to the 5 hearing radius Shreth generator. I made it smaller, and I made it so they'll only spawn one at a time, just so that we can get a clear picture of which one of these is generating. On the death emote that we did from this guy, if we go ahead and get in range, we'll see that when we aggro him first, he screams. A scream emote, he sends the help me local signal. This first stress generator hears help me and does its normal generation. And that if we can lure this guy over here and smite him, he's got this little short home radius. Yep. And we killed him. And this generator right here was within the 5 units. It heard him say his death emote, which was the local signal avenge me, and it generated a Shreth 10 units to the north, because that's the setting that we had when we were playing around with the Shreth generators last night in our previous video. So the next thing I wanted to show you is activation, which is not anywhere near as useful as local signal, but there are some things you can use it for, particularly when laying down doors and levers if you're doing a lot of those, and we'll go ahead and show you how to do that right now. If you take a look here in Ace Content Creator, there is an Advanced tab. If we click on that, we have some business about linkable monster generators and parent-child linking. Parent-child linking is how doors and dungeons are opened by levers. Generally speaking, it's how magic traps are linked to pressure plates, and it's also how, as you see, linkable monster generator, it's also how you can create some generators for monsters without going and creating a new weenie altogether, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But if we go in here, go ahead and take a look at what we've got in here. We have some doors and some pressure plates and some levers that I already imported here. I'm going to go ahead and create a door. It's just a plain old door. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Advanced tab, and we're going to do this thing that says Get Parent GUID. Each item in the world that spawned has a unique GUID. We can go ahead and click that. It identifies this specific object, this specific door out of every other door in the world. So that's how we're going to link it specifically to this door. So we're going to get parent ID, make sure we have that. Go down here to the drop-down menu, and we can find a lever here. And we can go ahead and hit Link Child WCID to Parent. And then create a lever. We'll nudge it up a little bit so that you can see it. And if we hit this lever, it'll open the door. And we hit it again, it closes the door. No need to create specific weenies with specific local signals, open doors. This, I think, is one of the great use cases of activation. So if we can go ahead and we can do something else, we can create another linked lever. I know there are some dungeons where the same lever will open the door. Generally speaking, it'll be like the lever behind the door, so that you can open it up for your group. They're actually just another child object of the same door. So if we nudge that up, we can see this will also open the door. We can go over here and close the door. And we can do that with as many child objects as we want. So another thing we can do with activation, we can make some magic traps. Don't use them in a whole lot of Ender Retail dungeons, but in the early game they used a fair number of magic traps. We can just raise that up a bit just so you can see it's a little cabbage. It could be any setup you want, really. They just use cabbages and sometimes apples for their magic traps. Turbine did, and then we can get the parent GUID. So we have that, and then we can use a pressure plate. There's a pressure plate. The parent. Go here. Make sure we're on the same land block. And then when we walk on the pressure plate, it tries to dispel us. So if we take a look at that magic trap in SQL, we can see that it has a property here, 83, which is the activation response. There are a number of different ones of these. In this case, it's 4096, which is cast spell. This is what enables it to cast a spell when it gets activated by the pressure plate. It also has this int property down here, 119, which identifies it as active. Not sure exactly how necessary that is, but generally speaking, that's included, so I always include it with mine. And another one of the activation responses is generate. This is a nice way to make pressure plates that generate creatures without having, or objects, I suppose, without having to make additional weenies. So it can be a more efficient way of doing things. It's this 65536 entry right here for the activation response. It has to be active, and of course they've got a generator table. This is a specific monster for a dungeon that I did, and I'd rather have it make a Narshreth. So I'm going to have 108. Got our delay here, which is awfully long. Not going to stay that long, and we'll go ahead and see what that looks like. So we've placed our pressure plate right here, and if we walk on it, see it makes a Shroff. So there are interesting things you can do. It doesn't have to be on top with the pressure plate. It can use all those where creates that we looked at in our generator videos. So you can make a generator in a specific location or somewhere relative to the pressure plate. It's fairly useful. So I wanted to go ahead and show you something else you can do with activation. It is emote triggered activation. You can go here in a Reed Shark den that I created. Go activation. We'll have it give a local broadcast. I was activated. There are, as you remember, a couple of fields that we need for activation to work. We need this int83 right here, this activation response. We talked about just briefly some of the other activation responses you can have. This is probably the most useful one, this 2048. It means emote. So basically, when this item, this Reed Shark Den, gets activated, it's going to check its emotes and do the activation emote. So you can have any number of other responses here. So we also need to have int119 active right here, and we also need to have something activating it. So right now, that Reed Shark Den is going to be generating first this adult Reed Shark, and there is a way for this adult Reed Shark to trigger the activation on that Reed Shark Den. We're going to emotes here, so ignore all these heartbeats for now. We come here, we can either do on generation, activate, and since it's by default a child object of the generator, because the generator is creating it, it's just by saying generation, it will target the generator for the activate emote. What we're going to do instead is we can do death, which is probably more useful. On death, it can also activate. So here we are with our Reed Shark Den, this little black square here, and it's generating this adult Reed Shark, the one that we gave the on death activate to. And so we should see when we kill it, you see the local broadcast from the activated Reed Shark Den says I was activated. Not usually going to use it for local broadcasts. A lot of other things you can use it for. You can use it for quest stamping to count the number of kills. You can use it to trigger other emotes as well. Not as useful as local signal, but there's some interesting things you can do with it. One of the great benefits of this method of activation, this communication between the generated creature, the adult Reed Shark, and the generator, the Reed Shark Den, is that it can travel across land blocks. This activation response can travel across land blocks in a way that local signal does not. And so if you have an area like we have here around Arwick, where there are a lot of different land blocks, they're invisible to you and to me, but there are a lot of different land blocks. The seams of them are sort of right along here and then right along there, I think. If we were to be chased by this Reed Shark across those land blocks, and we killed it, and it had an on-death local signal, that would fail, because the generator would be on a different land block at that point. But because it's linked in this way, the activation response can travel that distance, and so we don't have to worry about the emotes getting lost across land blocks. So I guess one way to conceptualize local signal is sort of a key and a lock. You have your sort of key code, which you need to be the same. That's the signal being sent. Extremely useful. Activation has its own uses. There are some things that it's useful for, but mostly you're going to use in local signal. So I hope you enjoyed the video and hope you learned a few things.